Perfect. We are live now, and I'll just check if people could sign in because I started receiving messages. So let's just check if everybody can see us, and we will then start. Right. Hello, everyone. If you're here, could you just drop a comment for us so we know that we have the audience and we can start? Just drop a comment. Hi, RJ. Thank you so much. Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much. Okay. So let's start, everyone. And first of all, let me say I apologize. Usually we try our best that we do start on time. Today we are a little bit late. And the reason is because I just moved countries and I wasn't sure about the internet speed here. So I tried my best. So we are here now, but I'm very, very sorry that we are delayed because of the interruption, which I didn't anticipate. I should have, but I just couldn't control it. So this is Unboxed with SG, and as usual, we are talking about school improvement because you all know by now that we are very passionate about school improvement, and we really want our schools to transform. We really want our educators to learn more and adapt to the things that are changing. So today I have a guest here, Mr. Alistair Downs, and I would want him to give his detailed introduction to you. I can tell you that when I was looking at his profile and the kind of contribution he has in school improvement, that is extremely impressive. And I have a lot of respect for him. And when we contacted him, the reason was because we want him. He has worked in the GCC countries for a very long time. And I really wanted him to bring all that experience because many times we do feel that we are not connecting with the educators, or maybe the school culture is a little different. Since there are diverse workforce, there are people coming from different countries and all connecting in a Saudi school or in a UAE school or in a Bahraini school or Kuwaiti school. So we really wanted to understand from all the you know expat colleagues, how did they break that ice, how did they reach people who are working in those schools, or the parents who are coming from the same community or same country. How is that working out for them, and what exactly is their mantra, or what exactly is their tip that we really need as well? Because sometimes all the plans work beautifully as long as they're on the paper, but we are not really having that kind of communication with the people who are involved, who will make that dream come true. So thank you so much once again for showing up and waiting for us for 10 minutes beginning. And as I said, I would like Mr. Alastair to first give his full detailed introduction so everybody who is joining us, or even when the recording will be available on LinkedIn or YouTube for you to watch it anytime later, we will know who was in conversation with us and what kind of wealth of knowledge and experience he's bringing to this forum. So thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Alastair. Over to you.
No problem. Thank you so much for the warm welcome, and good evening, everybody. Originally from the UK, I've been now for around 15 of those have been in either headship or principalship roles, and most recently in the role I'm doing now in Saudi Arabia, which is one of the education director for a group schools. Hopefully, people who are with us this evening will find what I've got to say interesting. I suppose skill set and where I feel I can add value to a conversation is specifically with new school development. All of the schools that I've been involved with as a head or a principal or in my role now have always been startup schools. I'm a British Schools Overseas qualified inspector and a peer accreditor for Council of British International Schools. So I do inspection work as well and have the luxury of being invited into schools to support them with their school improvement journey.
Thank you so much for your introduction. So let me start with a simple truth here. Most schools do not fail because of bad intentions. They fail because of blind spots. And I did talk about the blind spots in my last episode as well with another guest. And today I want to talk about the blind spots nobody warns you about. When you start a school, rebrand one. And I want to talk about rebranding, prepare for inspection, or try to scale into places like Saudi Arabia. So, this episode is for founders, owners, school leaders, and investors who want their schools to work in real life, not just look good on paper, obviously. So, no theory, no motivational noise here, just what actually goes wrong and how to avoid it. So, let's start at the beginning. Our segment one here is startup schools, the real challenges. Startup schools usually obsess over three things: branding, buildings, and brochures. But the real problem shows up much later when it is too late to fix them easily. So, Mr. Alistair, how would you look at a school that is ready to rebrand or that is ready to go through that kind of change? I want you to please share your knowledge and your wisdom with all the founders, investors, or principals who will be watching this later on or who are right now present as audience. What is it that founders underestimate? What are the challenges when it comes to hiring, and talk about a little bit about the cash flow as well, because I think people don't really talk about cash flow when they start looking at the school improvement or rebranding. So I would, hand over the floor to you and you take the direction you wish to for this segment.
Maybe I start with the startup school before maybe we go on to rebranding.
Absolutely.
It's obviously slightly different.
Absolutely.
In startup school, I mean, there are no end of challenges with the startup school. I've been fortunate to be able to start schools in China and Thailand, Qatar, Bahrain, and now Saudi Arabia. And there are no end of challenges. And one that you mentioned there, the build, no matter how organised you are, the build always seems to go right down to the wire.
Absolutely.
And that is clearly a challenge because not only is it a challenge for fitting out the school, but it links so heavily usually to marketing and admissions. Trying to start a school with healthy numbers of students when you don't have a product to show ultimately your customers, being the parents, and the consumer, being the student, when you're not able to actually show them that in terms of touch and feel. And I think schools, it's very different, maybe we can call it a business, very different business to many different sectors, where parents, they're entrusting the school with their most precious item, their child.
True.
And it's very much touch and feel, and usually they will want to actually step foot in the building. So, I mean, the build is an obvious one, but I suppose maybe we go a bit deeper into other challenges that maybe aren't quite so obvious. Now, I always think that the number one overriding challenge of a startup school is being able to successfully articulate the vision of the school to the market. Knowing who your target market is, because there may be room in the market for a new school, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the type of school that you're planning to open. Is it a premium school? Is it a school catering to children who maybe have additional needs? Is it a school that has a heavy focus on the arts or sports? It really does depend on what your school's strengths are and matching that with actually who the market is. Now, generally speaking, when a new school goes in market, there are many existing schools, and there will be some very successful schools and some very well regarded schools. And even if parents don't really know those existing schools that well, often in any market there's a perception that parents think they do know about that school because it's just been there for a long time. It has a track record. I think that's probably the same in every city, every country I've worked in. There's a familiarity with the name.
Correct.
Suddenly a new school comes into the market, and you have to be able to successfully articulate, what are we about? What do we stand for? Why is a parent going to come to this new school, this essentially unknown quantity, over maybe the school that's been in the town or the city for a long time? Or why are they going to move schools from one school to another? So really clearly articulating that and getting that buy-in from parents is crucially important. And also, you mentioned a moment ago about staffing, also getting that buy-in from staff as well. I've worked for family-run schools. I've worked for kind of UK branded schools as well. And schools can sometimes fall into a trap, certainly UK branded schools, when occasionally there can be that we can take the UK school and we can put it in the UAE or Malaysia or China or wherever. That's not usually reality. We can take the best parts of that successful school in the UK, but we have to be aware of the environment we're moving into. We have to be aware of the context, the local requirements, and again, the target market and what the target market requires and demands, essentially.
Absolutely.
So articulating that vision, I would say, is kind of the overriding umbrella challenge that you need to really make sure that from day one you captured, so that when you do go out to the market, you are able to really clearly articulate that.
True. So, already I was talking about rebranding. I'm very interested in how the schools or investors or founders approach the whole rebranding concept. Now, with your experience, I would like to know more about, the things that I didn't approve. I was working as a head of education and leading 11 schools in 4 different countries, where the company bought many schools from old owners, and then they rebrand it. Now, rebranding is not about colors, slogans, or shining campaigns. Rebranding is about behavior. And what I really want to know from you, how did you react, or what's your strategy when you saw that the rebranding failed because the culture stayed the same leadership habits, same staff expectations, same parent communication tone. Also, parents felt inconsistency immediately. The new promises, but old practices. New vision, same complaints. Staff confusion was another silent killer. No retraining, no come join us, this is the fun bus. And there was no message, no key message, no clarity on what changes Monday morning or Sunday morning, provided wherever we are in the world. So these are some of the things from my observation, Alistair, and I really want you to please talk about these issues and what your strategy was, specifically when it came to rebranding, because it's a very powerful strategy, rebranding itself. But what I have seen many times, it wasn't really handled very well, and it didn't meet the expectations. It sold the story, but as soon as the people, as soon as parents hit the ground and they were in the school, they saw the same old school with no change in behavior. So please share your experience.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, obviously, from a financial point of view, from an investor's point of view, branding has many positives.
Mm.
To start with, you haven't got the issues of a build, or you haven't got the issue of taking over maybe there is already an existing building, so you don't have to actually build the greenfield site, but you are taking on a new building, so still starting from scratch. So you don't have that, and of course what you do have is you have instant revenue, because there will be some students who are already in the school. I have to say that I've been involved with a rebrand in Saudi Arabia, and again, everyone is different, no doubt, but my opinion is that actually rebrands are more challenging than startups. Startups have a whole host of challenges, and if we have time later on, we can revisit some of those other challenges.
Correct.
But actually, I mean, you really hit the nail on the head when you were talking then about culture and about a new name goes up above the door.
That's right.
But actually, is there actually change enacted in the school? And many schools that struggle with the rebrand, it is exactly that. It's when there isn't clarity, there isn't communication, and the change that either staff, parents, essentially the stakeholders, what they see doesn't actually match with either what they were promised or the perception that they had of what the change might be.
True.
And again, that comes down to communication. The school might not have claimed anything. They might not have claimed that there would be positive change.
Correct.
But parents, if there is a rebrand, especially if there's a rebrand of maybe a well-known school name, even if there isn't anything communicated, parents will assume that they will perceive that there will be a positive change. So lack of communication can really be a significant issue. I think, again, talking about number one challenge, it is that culture. There's been a school that's been in existence for however long. There are parents, students, staff members who have been doing things in a certain way for a certain amount of time. Now, that's not to say they've been doing things poorly at all, but they have been doing things in a certain way. And I think we all know that in any walk of life, change is challenging, and also change brings for everybody. And so certainly what I've found with rebrands is that change in that culture, raising those expectations of all, raising the standards, can be very, very difficult. The beauty of a new school is that although nothing is in place, and again, that brings its own challenge because you're starting from scratch.
You can always set the tone from the beginning. Yeah.
Absolutely. Day one, this is the standard. This is the expectation. And for students, for parents, for staff, this is what we're about. Transitioning to that when maybe a school's been operating in a different way for a period of time, that can be really difficult. Communication is key. Making sure that if there are promises made to stakeholders, and I don't just mean parents in this, but to stakeholders, that the school continues to communicate that, and they keep everybody abreast of what is happening. So if we're saying that we're going to make alterations to the curriculum, we're going to offer more overseas trips, we're going to offer more after-school activities, we're going to change fee structures, the uniform, the canteen, maybe changes positive or negative.
Correct.
There has to be communication. I mean, communication is king in this way, and really is crucial that everybody is kept in the loop.
Absolutely agreed. Thank you so much. I'm going to go to my next favorite point that I always bring forward, which is school inspections. And trust me, there are many people who would disagree with me. You may disagree with me and say that schools should not be improved only for inspections. What I agree with that. But what my point is, there are so many schools around us that are struggling and they are failing. And when an inspection framework is brought in, it's easier to make that transformation because you have you do have a structure that you have to work with. Your aspirations or your goals or your targets are not beautifully vague, because that's not the time when they should be. They should be very structured, they should be very visible. When the school is faced of losing its license, which is the case where I've been associated with many schools, and we went from weak school to acceptable, or acceptable school to good, and sometimes a school that's been good for last 5 or 7 years, we went from good to very good. And that was only achieved because there was a structure available. This is how my experience is. Yours could be completely different, and I'm not disagreeing with that. Oh no, you shouldn't look for motivation, or you shouldn't or you should actually look beyond the inspection framework. I agree with that. I said yes, we should, but I think that's where a very good school would be, and I think that's where an outstanding school would be, because they are the ones who could take that kind of risk, because they're already established in so many ways that if they want to explore the real ways of excellence, they can go for it. But I think for the schools that are failing, at risk of losing licenses, I think they should stick to that kind of structure that the inspection framework is bringing in. So I want your opinion on that as well. But also, I also feel that inspections are not about perfection. They are about consistency. They are about what is regularly done and what is regularly seen in the corridors. Inspectors follow patterns, they don't follow performances. Lesson observations are cross checked, students' voice matters more than presentations, documentation must match reality, leadership coherence matters more than charisma. Do leaders tell the same story, or their stories have discrepancies? Are priorities aligned across departments, or everybody is going in their own direction? So I think that's the beauty of an inspection framework. I see it as a very handy and a very practical tool for school improvement. So let's talk about that. Let's share your side of the story when it comes to inspection.
Yeah. So in my view, I mean, I agree with everything you've said, really. In my view, best practice would be that a school is doing a continuous self-review, self-evaluation, aligned to the inspection standards of whichever framework they're working with. And that will obviously differ country, nationally. It may also differ in terms of international frameworks as well, if you're a US curriculum school or you're a British school or so forth. But essentially, it's the same process, it's the same practice, that having the inspection framework, having the standards, and that, as you say, provides the structure. And then completing a whole school self-evaluation where everybody is involved. It shouldn't just be done by the senior leaders or just by the principal. Hopefully the principal and the senior leaders know the school, but actually the teachers who are on the ground, they will know their phases, their year groups, their department far better than actually the principal or the SLT, because they're on the ground every day. So having that self-evaluation document linked to the standards, as you say, provides that structure that you can then build on and work with. I think moving on to the actual inspection, what you want to see when you go into a school is, I suppose, honesty from the school in terms of their own self-evaluation and their own judgment.
Correct.
You mentioned about cross-referencing. Now, yes, in any inspection, observations are a key part of that, lesson observations. But it isn't only about lesson observations, and that's when a lot of people think, well, if every teacher does a stand-down lesson, that's all we need to do. Well, inspectors are observing the lessons, but they're also looking through students' books. They're seeing the work that students are doing in that lesson, and also that they've done so far during the year. And all the inspectors who are going into schools, they're experienced practitioners, and they will be able to quite easily see. They go into a year 7 lesson, a grade 9 lesson, whatever it might be, and they look in a student's book, in, let's just say, a maths lesson or an English lesson, they will be able to see if that student is working at kind of age-related expectations. And if the school is claiming that, yes, all our students are at age-related expectations or higher, and they're presenting data to show that in terms of maybe internal, not external standardized, but internal data, which obviously inspectors can't really question. But what they can question is then if they're seeing the lessons and what students are producing in that lesson is maybe not of the same standard the school is judging it at. And so I always want schools, and I sometimes go into schools. I was in Kuwait about 2 weeks ago to support a school with their pre-inspection. And that's when schools often invite an inspector in for a day or two to support them to prepare the inspection. And I say, make sure that, as you said, everyone's on the same page. You don't want one leader saying one thing and a different leader saying something else and a teacher saying something else.
Correct.
But also, crucially, make sure those judgments are accurate. Inspection and school improvement and development is a journey. Even schools that are graded outstanding, everyone can get better. It doesn't mean that there's no room to improve. And so making sure that you are honestly and accurately making those judgments, because the worst thing a school can do is they put down a judgment, which, let's just say for argument's sake, it's that such and such aspect of a school is outstanding, is the highest grade that it could be. If the inspection team feel it isn't, and they feel there is evidence to show that that judgment is inaccurate, it doesn't just call into question the transparency of the judgment. It actually calls into question the ability for those leaders to make judgments across the school in general.
Correct.
And then, well, if they're not able to make an accurate judgment for X, Y, or Z, well, then actually maybe the lesson observations and the performance management that they're doing on staff, they're saying that all their staff are good or outstanding. Well, actually, if they can't make an accurate judgment on this, maybe their judgments actually on other aspects are also inaccurate as well. So I think that honesty and transparency goes a long way to making sure that inspection does go well, and also preparation. I know it's an obvious one, but making sure that the school is well prepared for what I would call the non-negotiables. And what I say non-negotiables are things like aspects of compliance, safeguarding, policies, procedures. Your point about making sure everyone's on the same page. If you've got a feedback and marking policy, for example, feedback and marking policy says that this, and this. You need to make sure that every teacher is doing that.
Correct. Absolutely.
And that there is consistency. And they're the non-negotiables. You go into a school, every teacher can have a bad lesson. Okay? Every teacher can. Even in schools where behaviour is outstanding, there can be a child who runs down the stairs and it was bad luck and nearly knocked over the inspector as the child jumped down the stairs and ran through the door. These things happen. They are not making or breaking an inspection. You know, the teacher, the odd teacher who has a bad lesson, is not making the school get a bad outcome. That's not the reality. Yes, if the team observe 50 lessons and there's 40 poor lessons, clearly, yeah, that would be a cause for concern. But the odd lesson that doesn't go according to plan and isn't as strong as maybe that teacher normally performs, that is not causing a significant problem for the school. What is potentially causing a significant problem is if there are things that the school is able to plan for and should have in place and they're not in place. There isn't really excuse for that. You can have an excuse for a teacher maybe having an odd poor lesson. There can be circumstances that are out of their control, but not having a policy in place that is a fundamental requirement. Not having it in place, not having staff have completed certain aspects of maybe mandatory training. Those sorts of aspects, there's no way out of that. So when I was at the school in Kuwait a few weeks ago, I just urged them that, again, whatever you're putting down in terms of your judgments and your self-evaluation, just make sure it's accurate. And those non-negotiables, those things that are completely under your control, okay, even as far as making sure classrooms are tidy and ordered, displays on the walls, making sure they're up to date and tidy, they're in your control. So there's not really an excuse for not having those in place.
On that note, I wanted to just highlight one thing which I have noticed, that schools do not really understand when when we say and we advise the schools that please make sure that your judgment is accurate. That statement is not really fully understood by the school leaders, and I have seen it many times when you're looking at their self evaluation form, and you're talking to them and saying, well, are you sure that this judgment is accurate? And they'll say yes. But when you will dig deeper and wear a hat of an inspector, although you're not an inspector, I'm not an inspector in that perhaps, and we're just there as visitors or helpers. And when we're looking at the evidence, we can clearly see it is very poorly selected evidence and it's not going to do them any favor. Yet they are still insisting that this is a good judgment for to be placed on their school evaluation form that will be submitted to the inspection authorities. How do you handle that piece? Because sometimes it becomes very challenging, even though you're showing them a good evidence and the evidence that is not going to do them any favor, and it was better if it wasn't really listed. You know what I mean? So how do you handle that kind of situation with the schools?
So the both of the organisations that I inspect for, they both of them, it's much more of a supportive inspection. It's a supportive
Right.
process.
Right.
So as I said, not only is there the option for those pre-inspections, but there'll be dialogue with the lead inspector prior to the inspection taking place. The school may be sharing in advance aspects of their self-evaluation document, aspects of their evidence. So there can be a bit of back and forth and a little bit of support that's provided, because it's an opportunity. I mean, you don't want to show, you don't want schools to be putting on a show
Yes.
just for those few days, but it is their opportunity to shine, and you want them to be seen in the best possible light. And so you want them to give themselves the best opportunity to ultimately come out of the inspection with a positive outcome, whatever that may be. More and more, increasingly, there is so much emphasis on inspection outcomes. And maybe that is a conversation for another day. But really, a huge amount can rest on an inspection outcome. So fortunately, the two organisations I work for, it is much more of a supportive, collaborative process. If there are, however, having said that, if there are gaps when you're on the ground, then I would always say it's about the inspection. No surprises. So when I take my team into a school, I will always say to them before we start, no surprises for the school. And what I mean by that is, let's not get to the final day where we're giving some final feedback, initial kind of final verbal feedback, and suddenly there's a surprise for the school. If there are some issues with evidence, or there are some issues with actual practice we've seen in school, that constant dialogue during the inspection is what should be happening, and what a school, any school, should expect from the inspection team. Obviously, there are many people maybe watching this from all over the world and involved in different countries. But I would urge them that when they do have an inspection team in, they ask for feedback throughout the day. They certainly have feedback at the end of day one, end of day two, and so forth, so that if there are any gaps, then they can be addressed. And it might be that there's a gap that the school has to hold their hands up and say, actually, no, we don't have that evidence.
Right.
But it might be that the school does have the evidence, but just hasn't presented it in the correct format.
Correct.
And so the school really needs to be given every opportunity. So I would urge it, even if the inspection body doesn't, as part of, say, our processes, insist on having that feedback meeting, which which we do. But there may be other inspection bodies who don't do that. But I would urge the school to request a feedback meeting, certainly at least at the end of each day, so that they can get an idea of maybe what the inspectors are thinking, where those judgments are, and if there is missing evidence, then the school can address it prior to the next morning when the inspectors come back into school.
True. Right. So let me just very quickly talk to the people who are watching us at the moment. If you do have questions, this is the right time that you start posting your questions on the comments, because we are heading towards our last segment, and then after that we'll be wrapping up. So if you do have any questions, I always pick your question and I never miss your questions. So please do put them on the comments, and I will start conveying those questions to Mr. Alistair, and he can then share his answers. But please do not forget, and we're waiting for your questions. Thank you so much. So let's go to the last segment, which is growth and scaling into KSA, opportunities with conditions. KSA is full of opportunity, but it's not forgiving for sloppy models. I do have a couple of points that I have seen since we did have. I had involvement in many schools that were opening in KSA, or some old schools that we bought and we were rebranding them. And these are some of the things that I noticed, that copy paste school models do not survive. There could be cultural misalignment, parents' expectations are very different, governance standards are higher, leadership pipelines matter more than building, obviously. So, who will run the school day to day, local capacity building, decision speed versus control? And then the last point of observation was regulatory and compliance maturity. Inspections are rigorous, data matters, professional credibility is non negotiable. So, now I'm going to go back to the word scalability, because that's why everybody wants to have an involvement, have an investment in Saudi Arabia right now, or want to own a school, a brand new school, greenfield school, or maybe a school that was already there, has a legacy, and they want to now rebrand it for success. So what do you think? Is the market forgiving for the models, like whatever models that are going to be there, or what are the special terms and conditions that usually Saudi Arabia or Ministry of Education from Saudi are keeping in front of the investors or founders before there is a point of investment? Because we have seen some of the very sloppy decisions that have been taken place, and it didn't obviously serve the students or the community. And then the schools had to go through another change, because the very first change that was taking place was not good enough.
I mean, first of all, certainly there is market in Saudi Arabia.
Absolutely. Market, there is no question about. I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
But the problem is with like, just do whatever or bring whatever and it will work out. I disagree.
Yeah, exactly.
Completely.
It goes back to one of the first points with the first segment, which is about the target market. There are a lot of schools in Riyadh. I mean, Riyadh is a huge city. There are hundreds of schools, and there are some very, very highly successful schools. A lot of schools work towards the GAT, General Aptitude Test, an SAAT, which are the two examinations students require to move on to university. So a lot of schools work towards that, even if there may be, say, a US curriculum school. Ultimately, they then are towards grade 12. They're then moving in to focus on those two assessments, which will then support schools to move into to move into university. So again, knowing that target market and showing a level of humility, not showing, I suppose, arrogance of saying, well, we are a certain school and we will come in and we will do it this way, because you need to know what the market requires. And yes, there are a number of schools that have entered the market in the last few years, certainly British schools that offer different curriculum working towards, say, IGCSE and A-level. But those schools are in absolutely massive minority. They might be quite high-profile schools, and many of them are Royal Commission for Riyadh City School, which is a slightly different license. But actually, there's a handful of those schools. There are hundreds and hundreds of MOE schools within the city, and many of them are doing, as I said, a very good job in terms of supporting students to achieve well in those assessments at the end of school, and therefore gain places into university. So knowing who you're targeting and making sure that you provide a high quality offering for those families is crucial, and making sure that you align what you're doing to that. So if I talk about Reigate Grammar School, for example, we are not preparing students for GAT and SAT. We are gearing pupils towards A-levels. And so that is our focus. We feel as though we do that very well. And so parents who are looking for that, there is a market in Riyadh for that.
Correct.
So obviously we are an option for those families. I think that there are some schools who sometimes try and do everything. There are some schools I know that are trying to do British. They're also trying to throw in IB. They're also, because maybe sometimes parental expectation, they're then also trying to do university entrance exams for sounding. And potentially they end up not doing any of it that well. So I think you need to decide what you're doing and then make sure that you do that very well, because although there is market in Riyadh, as I said, there are many schools that have been here for a very long time who have a track record of excellence in their particular field, whichever curriculum, whichever assessments and examination it might be.
Right. I'm so happy that you mentioned about the schools who opt for so many programs, and then they end up actually not doing anything in a required manner, I would suggest. So but schools sometimes do not understand. They think that maybe this will bring in more business, and it does actually sometimes. But not every school would benefit from that kind of model. It's a financial decision, to be honest, but not every school will benefit from that model. I think you brought that point up, and I'm happy that you did, because many of the founders or investors who are thinking of buying a school or starting a new school, they'll definitely think about it, that you can have one program and offer it well with highest possible quality, or you can have too many and
Also
not justifying.
Also from a financial point of view, having a model where you're offering multiple different streams, for example, I mean, it can be highly expensive.
Correct.
And also in terms of just purely logistics of space, it's another significant challenge in Riyadh that large school sites, if you think about other countries in the region where you might get a greenfield site, and many schools would want 20,000 square meters plus. Certainly there's a new school being built in Bahrain, it's a 100,000 square meter site. You're just not simply finding that size of site in Riyadh. You're finding sites that are certainly central Riyadh that are 10,000 square meters. And so working out again what you're going to offer. Are you going to have a focus on maybe extracurricular activities and sports? Well, then clearly that needs space allocation.
True.
If you're going to try to do A-level and IB and whatever else, well, that again will take up classroom space. So it's not just the financial impact for staffing costs, but trying to also source that expertise of teachers who are able to potentially teach multiple different curricula, but also just purely the space of a site. There are very few options in central Riyadh for the sort of size of sites that many schools would expect in, say, the UAE, Qatar, or Bahrain.
I have a quick question here. So, the schools that you are involved in, and not necessarily we need to mention their names, obviously, if you don't want to, but are they only based in Riyadh or are they in other cities as well in Saudi?
Um, no, so at the moment we're looking at a school site in Jeddah,
Right,
but at the moment we have two schools, two British curriculum schools in Riyadh, and we have two US curriculum schools and a Saudi national curriculum school in
right.
Riyadh.
So,
But
these are all in
at the moment,
Riyadh.
all in
All
Riyadh.
in Riyadh.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you have been doing some homework in Jeddah. And the question basically was because we have been talking about some investment opportunities and what the investors should think about. So, do you think that the culture, educational culture, is different in Riyadh and could be possibly different in Jeddah? Or do you think country wise it could be very similar?
I think that certainly in terms of the demand,
Mm,
is a bit that I see at the moment is in Riyadh,
right.
which is why I was at the Education Investment Conference last week or 2 weeks ago,
Yes.
and Riyadh is the focus for pretty much everyone who was there.
Mm,
I think that Jeddah, it will happen, and certainly we've seen some schools open in Jeddah. I think that I suppose the population in Jeddah in terms of demographic, it's maybe slightly different.
mm,
I think also in Riyadh, even depending on where you are in the city, it can be a slightly different population. There are different areas of the city that are maybe more highly populated by expatriates. There are other areas of the city where it's a lot more of a local population. So even for ourselves, for example, we're currently finalising another campus for the UK branded school
right.
in Riyadh, in a different location in Riyadh. And so, although there will be certain aspects that we will retain,
Mm, mm,
the market is going to be much more of a local market. Whereas at the moment, we have got around about 95% expatriate children in our school in Riyadh, very few locals. We're actually going to move to open another location where the majority will be local. And so that again, you need to alter your offering, keep those core values and ethos, obviously, that have made the school a success both in the UK and internationally. But you need to alter the offering to cater to the market.
true. Okay, so we do have here one question, and it is from RMG. She's asking. I know her, so that's why I know that it's her. She's asking why schools always focus their progress just based on inspections. I think we did discuss it. Maybe she missed that part. Do you want to take her through that?
It's true, and it's in my mind it's very unfortunate. And what I hear time and time again, I also hear it in my own schools, is the line of we're doing this for the inspection, and time again we have to tell our colleagues, no, we're not doing it for inspection. We're doing it because that's the standard that we should be operating at.
Correct.
Whatever it is, it might be compliance, it might be academic, whatever it might be, but this is the international standard that we want to be associated with. So that's why we're putting in place these things.
True.
We're not just doing it for the inspection. If we put these things in place, then we'll have a successful inspection whenever the inspection takes place.
Correct.
But it's trying to, again, shift that mindset, shift that culture, so that actually ongoing self-review, ongoing self-improvement, that's just part of school culture. The fact that then there's an inspection that happens 1 year or 1 month, well, we should be prepared for it anyway, because we're already doing these things.
it.
So hearing that time and time again that we're only doing this for the inspection, that's a phrase that I've heard many times. It starts to weigh you down a little bit, because we shouldn't be doing it just for the inspection. We should already be doing it.
True. But that's not what happens in schools. And that's why then there is a framework, and that's why people are then following that framework. And hence we were saying that it's a good tool. If a school is serious about improvement, they can always use this as a guideline. But as Mr. Alastair said, that everyone should be working on their school improvement all the time, and they should always be ready for inspection. Not that, oh, inspection is going to happen, let's prepare for that. That should not be the approach. So that is correct. Hi, Kiran. And hello, Sarah. Thank you for joining us. We are at the end of our podcast right now. We started earlier than our usual time. We usually start at 6:30, but today we started at 6 o'clock. But we were not really starting at 6 because of the internet connection that I was having trouble with. I could only start at 6:10. So if you join now, you can always watch our video recording. It will be available for you on YouTube and on the LinkedIn page for our company. Now that we are wrapping it up, thank you so much, Mr. Astaire, for mentioning the challenges or the advice. I believe that people who are going to watch it later, or the ones who attended the entire episode, they will find it very, very helpful. Now, just a personal question: what would you want to do to your own school in case you opened your own school tomorrow? And if that's what you are hoping to do, then I wish you all the best. But what would you really do? Please, could you sketch your dream school to us? What would you want on school? How would you run it? What kind of teachers? What kind of curriculum? Please enlighten us so we can take that thought with us and think about the future.
I suppose I may be slightly biased in terms of curriculum, because pretty much all of my couple of schools I work with in Riyadh is with UK schools, so it would certainly be a UK curriculum school. I certainly very much believe in the UK independent school sector,
Right.
and that holistic education model where, yes, it is about academic results, but actually that's just one part of the puzzle, and actually strong personal, social, and emotional development, actually that goes hand in hand with academic results, and actually supports
Correct.
academic attainment. So I probably want it to be certainly a school, maybe not in name linked to a UK branded school, but certainly its approach, I suppose, to what we deliver, offering that genuinely holistic education. And I suppose above all, I know this seems a little bit of a cliche to finish, but I want it to be a happy place that people really want to be part of. They really want to come into school. We all have bad days, students, parents, staff, we all do, but generally, on the whole, I want to be a place where people want to belong. They want to be part of a community. And if you are happy in work, if you are happy in school, then you will progress as a student, and as a staff member, you will do a far better job if you are happy in your role than if you're not. So I'd want it to be a happy place, which I know is a little bit of a cliche, but maybe a nice place to end.
Yeah, maybe. But to be honest, I think I'm going to be dreaming about that school and to be able to visit that school one day. I mean, it's a beautiful description that you have given, because yes, a school could be outstanding in many ways, but sometimes people are not really looking at how it's contributing to the memories of those students or children who are under our care, and how is it making those parents happier because they have lesser things to stress about, and school is obviously not one of that. So I think keeping that as an aim and as a target is a beautiful target. And if this is if people will consider it maybe a little on the emotional side on and not on the practical side, let them deal with their philosophy. I think I'm really bonding with you over this vision, and I would really hope to see that one school one day under your leadership that you would call happily a happy school. for everyone, whoever is
Indeed,
associated
yes.
with it. Thank you so much for your time. And I apologize one more time for the little delay that we had. And but I'm sure that this is not the very first and the last dialogue we are having. And if your time will allow, we would reach again, and we would bring more themes for you, or if anything that you would like to share with the audience. And I would be taking some
Look forward
clips
to it.
from this episode as well, and I'll be posting it. I'll tag you also, so people, if they have any questions, if they want any advice, if they feel that they can come to you, any investors perhaps who would like to consider your advice and your expertise, I believe that it would be a very good outcome from this podcast. So thank you so much for your time and your wisdom. To our audience, whether you are starting a school, fixing one, rebranding, preparing for inspection, or thinking about Saudi expansion, the core principle is the same. Strong schools are not built on ambition alone. They're built on clarity, discipline, and honest self assessment. If this episode made you uncomfortable, that is usually a good sign. Discomfort is where real improvement starts. If you want deeper conversation on any of the topics or segments that we uncovered, you can certainly write to us. You have our email address, and you also have access to Beyond the Box LinkedIn profile and my profile on LinkedIn. You can always drop questions or comments on the recording itself, or if you are a private person and you don't want public display of your statements and your comments or questions, you can always do that privately as well. We'll welcome any style, personal or public, whatever, however you wish to reach, we are there for you. So thank you, and we do it free of cost. So this for this reason, I will thank Mr. Alistair again for giving us this time, which is precious. There is absolutely no price tag on this time that he has given for us, because obviously it was done for free and for goodwill. So thank you so much, everyone. Stay well. And if you are ignited, enlightened, and if you are ready to make changes, please share your stories with us, because we're waiting for those success stories from our audience. Thank you. And